You know Russell Westbrook don't have the temperament to put up with that. Come on, y'all. That ain't who he is.
You know Russell Westbrook don't have the temperament to put up with that. Come on, y'all. That ain't who he is. Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back. He clowned Russell Westbrook, the former MVP, in a way fans are calling flat-out brutal. But what he said isn't just jokes. It hints at a deeper fallout between Westbrook and the league itself. And the truth about why Russ is still unsigned might be far messier than anyone's admitting. This isn't just about a player's decline, it's about a cold hard truth of the NBA machine. Let's get into it. The clowning echoed across the NBA. Russell Westbrook, once the walking triple-double, the relentless Energizer Bunny, is now sitting in basketball purgatory. In 2025, the man who used to dominate highlight reels is effectively unemployed, and Stephen A. Smith, never one to shy from NBA dysfunction, has gone all in, not with sympathy, but with raw public criticism. Inexcusable behavior, Stephen A. bellowed on national television. For a player of Westbrook's stature, a former MVP, to be framed in those terms is a public shaming. And it didn't stop there. Stephen A. flat out said Westbrook deserved a suspension after a reckless playoff performance, labeling it appalling. For years, whispers about Russ being a liability, his style not fitting the modern NBA, were confined to niche sports shows. Now Stephen A. was amplifying it on the loudest platform in basketball. He made a chilling prediction. If Westbrook couldn't accept a lesser role, he could be without a job. Think about that. From MVP to unemployed, from nightly SportsCenter top 10 to being clowned as a free agent no one wants to touch.
Inexcusable behavior. That's what I saw. And I don't know why this isn't being talked about enough, to be quite honest with you.
How did we get here? How did the man who averaged a triple-double across 3 straight seasons, who forced his way into the Hall of Fame conversation through sheer willpower, end up on the receiving end of this ridicule? Russ wasn't supposed to be here. He was the kid who nearly went to Stanford for academics. Basketball was plan B, but once he got on the court, he took it personal. That fire carried him, turning him into a force. My parents always told me, you know, you need to get a good education, and I was actually thinking about going to Stanford out of just for academics, out of high school. Teammates, legends, even rivals praised him as one of the hardest players they'd ever seen. James Harden admitted Westbrook's MVP season was perhaps the greatest single-season performance we ever seen. Other legends compared his fire to Michael Jordan, his relentlessness to Kobe. But here's the tragic twist. That same unrelenting style that made him feared is exactly what the modern NBA has turned against. Teams stopped guarding him. Opponents begged him to shoot. Colin Cowherd noted that Westbrook had become the least guarded guard in the league, with defenses literally stepping back, daring him to fire away. It's one thing for a role player to be ignored, but for a former MVP, that's humiliation. That's basketball's version of exile. Stephen A. knew it. He didn't just criticize Russ's game, he ridiculed his stubbornness, his inability to change. Russell Westbrook can't change. He's not going to be a good defender. He hasn't been the last 14 years, and that's not changing. This wasn't about missing shots. It was about the NBA's most infamous flaw, the refusal to adapt. When Russ was younger, his athleticism masked these issues, but now every flaw is magnified. Every gamble, every turnover, every ill-timed jump pass becomes fuel for critics.
My parents always told me, you know, you need to get a good education, and I was actually thinking about going to Stanford just for academics, out of high school.
The critics didn't stop at the court. Russ's very name was dragged through the mud. The Westbrook chants grew so loud his family stopped attending games. Honestly, me and my wife was at teacher-parent conference for my son. And the teacher told me, she's like, Noah, he's so proud of his last name. He writes it everywhere. He writes it on everything. He tells everybody, walks around and says, I'm Westbrook. Westbrook, that's his last name. And I kind of sat there in shock, and it hit me like, damn. Like, I can no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming. Like, it's shaming my name. It's my legacy for my kids. That's not just heckling, that's psychological warfare. When Westbrook finally broke his silence on how deeply it cut him, the world saw the human cost of his decline. Imagine carrying that weight, then turning on ESPN to hear Stephen A. say, you might not even have a job next season. That's not analysis, that's public execution. And it worked. But here's the bombshell you're not ready for. Stephen A. didn't just go after Russ. He put LeBron James on blast. He accused LeBron of contributing to the cynicism around Westbrook, even pointing back to the Houston playoff days when LeBron's Lakers mocked Russ as a liability. LeBron is guilty of that. Remember when Russell Westbrook was in Houston and they were in the playoffs against the Lakers, and LeBron James and the Lakers was talking about he with us when he had the ball. Think about that betrayal. One of the greatest players in NBA history, the man who vouched for Russ joining the Lakers, mocked him behind the scenes. And when things went bad, he let rumors of replacing him with Kyrie swirl all offseason. So now the question isn't just whether Russ deserves a roster spot. It's whether the entire NBA machine, from stars to analysts to fans, built him up only to tear him down. And the most shocking part? We're just getting started. What Stephen A. hinted at, Russ being left jobless, is the darkest irony in NBA history. A man who gave everything to the game, clowned on national TV, ridiculed by fans, and now standing on the edge of irrelevance. The real question isn't whether Westbrook failed, it's whether the NBA failed him.
LeBron is guilty of that. Remember when Russell Westbrook was in Houston and they were in the playoffs against the Lakers, and LeBron James and the Lakers was talking about he with us when he had the ball?
The thing about Westbrook is he was never supposed to be the punchline. He wasn't hyped like LeBron, wasn't built as the next Jordan. He was raw, undersized, and too wild, but his unshakable belief became his brand. That single-mindedness, which made UCLA coaches scratch their heads, turned into a Hall of Fame resume. 4 seasons averaging a triple-double. That's not just numbers, that's rewriting history. Legends like Oscar Robertson watched the impossible become reality. Westbrook made defiance an art form. But there's a cruel irony here. The very thing that lifted Russ to greatness, his refusal to bend, his refusal to change for anyone, is now what analysts like Stephen A. argue is destroying him. Magic Johnson said it himself. You have to own your stuff. And for all of Westbrook's fire, accountability has never been his strongest weapon. Think about how the game has evolved. The NBA of 2025 is built on spacing, efficiency, and threes. Meanwhile, Stephen A. hammered this exact point. Russ has never been a good shooter. That's not opinion. That's cold hard truth. In a league obsessed with advanced stats, Russ's inefficiency became unforgivable. Where once he could mask it by flying past defenders, now his missed jumpers feel like turnovers. Yet, here's where the story cuts deeper. It's not just about percentages, it's about perception. When defenses literally back away from you, the humiliation echoes louder than any box score. Imagine being a future Hall of Famer and watching defenders treat you like you're invisible. That's not just a tactical adjustment, it's basketball's version of exile, and Russ felt it.
Russell Westbrook can't change. He's not going to be a good defender. He hasn't been the last 14 years, and that's not changing.
This wasn't about missing shots. It was about the NBA's most infamous flaw.
That's why his frustration boiled over into emotional press conferences. He addressed the Westbrook chants, admitting the nickname was no longer just about him. It was hurting his family, his kids. I can no longer allow people. For example, Westbrook to me is now shaming. Like it's shaming my name. It's my legacy for my kids. That's devastating. We're not just talking about missed shots anymore. We're talking about a man's identity being publicly mocked until his children can't even enjoy their father's career without hearing insults. And yet, when Stephen A. had the chance to soften, to show sympathy, he doubled down. He called Westbrook's antics appalling. He accused him of failing his team when it mattered most. He flat out mocked the idea that Russ could reinvent himself as a role player. The problem with Russ on the defensive end is his mental mistakes. He doesn't pay attention off the ball. He gambles way too much. He goes for steals constantly. For Stephen A., this wasn't about hating Russ. This was about telling the basketball world a brutal truth. The game had passed him by. If Russ didn't adapt, he wouldn't just fade. He'd be erased. But here's the twist. Not everyone agreed. Legends who played with or against Westbrook still defended him. Former stars like Tracy McGrady and Chauncey Billups called him a once-in-a-generation competitor. Teammates from OKC to Washington vouched for him as one of the best locker room guys. Some even compared his fire to Michael Jordan's competitive nature. So why the disconnect? Why do players still ride for Russ while analysts roast him alive? The answer is perspective. Teammates see the work, the energy, the daily grind. Analysts see the missed shots, the turnovers, the losses. And fans? They see the memes. They hear Westbrook. They watch YouTube compilations of bad plays looped endlessly. And perception becomes reality.
I can't no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming. Like it's shaming my name. It's my legacy for my kids.
Which brings us back to Stephen A. Because whether you agree with him or not, his platform shapes the narrative. When he says Russ might be out of a job, he's not just analyzing. He's writing the obituary of Westbrook's career in real time. And in the NBA, perception often becomes prophecy. But here's where things get truly explosive. Stephen A. didn't just clown Russ. He called out LeBron James, accusing him of being part of the problem. That's betrayal at the highest level. LeBron, the same superstar who vouched for Westbrook joining the Lakers, who publicly defended him on Twitter, was being accused of undermining him all along. And when Kyrie Irving trade rumors swirled the following summer, it only reinforced the perception that Russ was disposable, even to the king. So let's be clear, this isn't just a story about Westbrook being a free agent. It's about the politics of the NBA, about how stars protect their legacy at the expense of others, about how the media amplifies every flaw until a player becomes unrecognizable. And it's about what happens when a man who built his entire identity identity on defiance has no one left to defy. Because here's the gut punch. Stephen A's prediction has come true. Russ is still a free agent. Teams have moved on. The game has shifted. And for all the passion, all the history, all the blood and sweat he left on the floor, the league has essentially said, we're done. When Stephen A clowns him, it's not just entertainment. It's the sound of a door closing. It's the NBA telling one of its fiercest warriors, thank you for your service, but we don't need you anymore.
Russell Westbrook can't change. He's not going to be a good defender. He hasn't been the last 14 years, and that's not changing.
And that is why this matters. Because Russell Westbrook isn't just any player. He's a cautionary tale for every star who thinks their athleticism will last forever. Every icon who thinks their willpower alone can fight time. Stephen A. Smith didn't just clown Russ. He exposed the brutal truth about the NBA. Loyalty is conditional. Greatness is temporary. And once the game decides you're done, it doesn't matter who you were. You can be clowned, ridiculed, and left behind. From MVP to meme, the NBA's cold goodbye. Russell Westbrook is still a free agent. That's not a rumor. That's not speculation. That's the brutal reality staring back at him day after day as training camps roll on and rosters fill without his name. For over a decade, Westbrook was one of the most relentless competitors the NBA had ever seen. Coaches marveled at his motor. Players compared him to Jordan and Kobe. Fans once adored his intensity. And now the phone doesn't ring. Teams scroll past his resume, his legacy, the triple-doubles, the MVP, the records, sits buried under memes and clips of bricks. Stephen A. Smith saw this coming. He warned the world with a brutal dose of honesty. If Russ couldn't take a lesser role, he might be out of the league entirely. He can't prove this season that he could take a lesser role. What are they saying he's going to be next year? Stephen A., they saying he possibly could actually be without a job.
He can't prove this season that he could take a lesser role. What are they saying he's going to be next year, Stephen A.? They saying he possibly could actually be without a job.
Without a job. Those 4 words echoed louder than any stat line. And here we are, months later, watching them become reality. Stephen A. clowned him, yes. But beneath the mockery was a prediction that now feels like prophecy. And here's what makes this expose darker than anyone expected. The NBA doesn't care. Respect from players doesn't matter. Loyalty to the game doesn't matter. A Hall of Fame resume doesn't matter. If you can't shoot threes, if you can't fit into a system, if you can't adapt to the algorithms of modern basketball, you're gone. That's the story the media doesn't want to tell, but it's the one Russ is living. Because despite everything, the decline, the narrative, Russell Westbrook is not washed. He still brings energy. He still plays with a motor most 25-year-olds don't have. He still loves the game. But in the cold calculus of today's NBA, none of that is enough. Colin Cowherd broke it down. Westbrook is the least guarded guard in the league. Teams literally step back, daring him to shoot. That humiliation is the death knell, because when defenses laugh at you, front offices do too. And yet the hypocrisy is blinding. Ask the players, they'll tell you Russ is one of the greatest competitors of his generation. Damian Lillard said he never saw someone play harder every night. Kobe himself once praised his fire. Even opponents like Patrick Beverley, a man once locked in open beef with Russ, admitted he respected his relentlessness. But ask executives, silence. Ask coaches, shrugs. Ask Stephen A., clowning. That gap between respect and rejection is where Westbrook's story turns tragic. Because what the NBA is really saying is this: we respect you as a man, but not as a player. We love your legacy, but not enough to give you a roster spot. Thanks for everything. Now go home.
Once it starts to affect my family, my wife, even today, my mom said something about it today, and it affects them even going to games. Like I don't even want to bring my kids to the game because I don't want them to hear people calling their dad nicknames and out of their names for no reason.
And Russ knows it. That's why his words about his family hit so hard. Once it starts to infect my family, my wife, even today, my mom says something about it today, and it affects them even going to games like I don't even want to bring my kids to the game because I don't want them to hear people calling their dad nicknames and out of their names for no reason. That's not just a free agency story. That's a human being watching the game he loves turn his name into a curse for his children. That's legacy turned into collateral damage. And yet through it all, Stephen A. doesn't flinch. He says the things no one else will say on TV, that Russ is too stubborn to change, that his athleticism has faded, that his decision-making remains a liability, that his refusal to adapt has left him stranded. It's harsh, it's cruel, but it's also true because the NBA is a league that rewards evolution. Look at LeBron James, who shifted from slasher to playmaker to three-point threat. Look at Vince Carter, who extended his career by reinventing himself as a role player. Even Carmelo Anthony, once left for dead, clawed his way back into relevance by accepting a bench role. Westbrook, he never bent, he never compromised, and now he's paying the price. But here's the haunting part. For all the clowning, for all the mockery, for all the hot takes, Russ's story is bigger than Russ. It's about how the NBA treats its aging stars. One moment you're the face of the league, the next moment you're a meme. One moment you're MVP, the next moment you're Westbrook. And Stephen A. Smith, he's just the megaphone. He's saying out loud what the league whispers behind closed doors. Once you're no longer useful, you're disposable. So where does that leave Russ? In limbo, in exile, waiting for a phone call that may never come. Watching as his name trends not for his highlights but for his failures, fighting not just for a contract but for dignity. And maybe that's the cruelest irony of all, because for years Russell Westbrook defined himself by defiance, by refusing to back down, by refusing to change, by refusing to let anyone tell him who he was. But now, for the first time, the game has told him, you're done.